Hello, innovators. I'm Todd and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Great Tech Group. You're invited to join our conversation to model the future of construction innovation and the digital transformation adventure of this great industry. My guest today is Trent Miskelly. He's the Chief Operating Officer at Document Crunch and brings over 20 years of expertise in software development, product management, and scaling B2B solutions. He leads the strategy and growth of Document Crunch's AI-powered platform, transforming complex construction contracts into actionable insights. Passionate about innovation, Trent is on a mission to help construction teams navigate contract risk smarter and more efficiently every day. Welcome to the show, Trent.
Thank you for having me. We're excited to be talking.
Yeah, likewise. So I always like to get people's kind of origin story. How'd you get into the industry to begin with?
So I've been in building software products my entire career since college. Actually started my first company right out of college, not focused on the construction technology industry, but was focused, interestingly, on applying machine learning to the education market, helping people build content in the education space. But my wife got me to move out to Houston, Texas. She was in the television production world. And so we came out to Texas, and I started at a software company called Integr8d in Houston, which was focused on building products, like hardcore products for like the IT community. Think about like SQL Server monitoring and backup and recovery and compliance and all that good stuff. I really love building products. Like it has just been something that's been a passion of mine. I like user experience. I like, I like the whole architecture of building products. So over time, I started out as really on the development side, leading development for a number of products at that company, and got introduced to the world of construction technology by a former QA manager of mine who went over to a general contractor in Houston, Satterfield and Ponticus, and was working as their IT director. He reached out to me and said, these guys are working with these 3D models and trying to figure out like how they can like do scheduling and costing from these models. And this was back early, like 2011, 2012 type timeframe, like when BIM was just kind of really starting to become something people were like trying to figure out what to do with other than just the visual aspect of it. And I was like, well, I know nothing about construction, but it sounds like an interesting problem. And so I started moonlighting on the weekends and in the evenings, just trying to figure out how to crack that problem. And one thing led to another, and the team was like, this is really cool. Like we're actually now like, we basically turned the 3D model into a database where they could actually start using it for these different like use cases for like scheduling and estimating and stuff. And so I got to know the Sage world on the estimating side. I got to understand like the world of takeoff and how the VDC teams were working with these models and constructing these models. And I went to the CEO, George Ponticus there, and I said, I think there might be a company here. Like, you know nothing about building software companies, and I know how to build products. So like, we should get some folks involved and see if there's something to go do here. And one thing led to another. I brought in some investors and we formed Assemble Systems, which was what I believe to be the first real product that was like taking these models to the web, helping people really share them out among other people that weren't just the VDC team, and then taking advantage of that data for a variety of use cases. And we ultimately built that company up over, I think, 7 years and sold it to Autodesk, which was a nice outcome for everybody. And that product still lives today, which just blows my mind. Like I go into some people's offices and general contractors, I tell them my background, just like I told you, and they'll be like, well, man, our BDC team's down here using Assemble today. And I'll go down there and sure enough, I mean, the product looks and appears just almost the same as it did. I was like, that's a 20-year-old product. It just blows, or nearly 20-year-old product, and it blows my mind. And from there, I'd started just to get more familiar with folks in the community. Actually was working on a partnership with a company called JB Knowledge that built SmartBid and Smart Insight, which was led by James Benham. And the guy who created the Content Crew podcast. And he became a friend of mine. And when I was looking for what I wanted to do next, he said, look, I need somebody to come over and run my product division. JB Knowledge was a big product and services organization, and he wanted to focus on the services organization. So I said, well, I've never run marketing. I've never run sales. I've never done any of that stuff. So just know you're getting what you're getting yourself into. And he's like, I trust you. You'll figure it out. I'm here for you if you need help. And I went there and I learned the broader business. So I wasn't just dealing with product and engineering. but I was actually working with the sales team and the marketing team, and like, how are we actually taking this thing to market, pricing and packaging and all that good stuff. And I really enjoyed like understanding more of the business. And so I helped him exit that business to Construct Connect, where I went over and ran the GC division for about a year and realized that I really just love early stage companies. So with some of my old team on the product and the engineering side, I decided to form a strategic consulting business and just start working with software companies that we might be interested in working with and thinking about what product we might want to go build ourselves. And I got introduced to Document Crunch actually during that time. So Chris Langiza over at Procore, who is a mutual friend and colleague of mine, and Josh Levy, our CEO at Document Crunch, said, "Hey, these guys are working on an interesting problem, and they're not product builders. They've never built a product or a company before, but they're subject matter experts, and we think that you could be helpful to them." So initially, just got introduced to Josh to talk to him and just say, "Hey, these are things you might want to think about." And I just really fell in love with what he was trying to do. Like, I mean, there was obviously a clear passion for helping the construction community better understand risk in their contracts, which I felt like really, to me, like I love the idea of democratizing information and making it like leveling the playing field, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So that seemed to be what he was really focused on doing. And there was the bones of a product there where I was like, I think we could actually turn this into something meaningful. And I helped him with the seed round of funding. When he was about to close that seed round, he was like, "I really need to form like a leadership team. I'm told that that's what I need to go do." And he was like, "I'd be interested in knowing if you guys would want to join that journey." It didn't take long for the group to decide and to do that. And so with that came myself, the head of product from the Assemble days, who had gone with me over to SmartBid, Will Moyer. He came on board as the head of product. Hala Dajani, who is one of our engineering leaders at Assemble, who had been at Autodesk, she came on board as one of our head of engineering, and we were off to the races. And so Document Crunch has been growing really, really nicely over that period of time. I mean, we've literally tripled product growth and customer count and revenue every single year, and including this one. And it's just been an exciting ride. I mean, so I'm very happy with the get.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's just been fun to watch the journey of Document Crunch. Josh was on the podcast a couple years ago, and even from that time to now, it's you guys have shot off like a rocket. So you guys are doing something right over there for sure.
And it really, I mean, I think it's doing something right, but I also think, as you know, from the construction world, I think it's really just, we're clearly solving a problem that was a pain point that wasn't obvious to people how big of a pain point it was. I think it's nothing more magical than that. But I've also been on the other side where you're kind of pushing the boulder up the hill the whole time, where it's like, I mean, Assemble was a good example of that. Like, it felt like we were trying to really educate the market before they were willing to buy products. And here, like something, I think, obviously the transition to the world of AI and people being more familiar with that and more comfortable with that has been a super helpful thing for us as well. It's like the boulder came over the top of the hill, and now people realize we can take advantage of these new world of technology to solve problems for us, make our lives easier.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because with your history over the construction industry over the last decade, that's been a huge growth and transition time for construction industry with embracing technology. What are some of the big kind of trend lines and things that you've noticed from your vantage point in that time?
Yeah, I would say there's been several inflection points. Once again, kind of going back to my storyline, which I know much I can really talk to the closest. In the Assemble days, it really was the world of the cloud technology. I mean, everybody was moving to the cloud, but it was still very early days. But no one was really thinking about, like, how can we take a model off of a desktop environment where just our BDC team is working with it and put it onto the web so that, like, anybody that would get value from it can work with it. So, I mean, I think one of the things that made Assemble what it wasn't because we were just creating a product that had value. That's like table stakes. But we were in a situation where the world was shifting to this world of products were on the web. And I think that inflection point really was what made Assemble like 1 + 1 = 3. I mean, it was a good product, but it was at the right time and a technology shift that actually was democratizing access to that information. And when taking that through the same lens of Document Crunch, obviously that's the case. Like, the table stakes now are you build products and largely they're available to everyone on the web. But what was really the big technology shift that was happening there was that AI became like front and center for everyone. And there's always been this fear. Like we were an AI first company before ChatGPT. So I remember those days very specifically at Document Crunch, because it felt like we were having to educate the market and build trust that AI was something that would be valuable for being able to peer inside these contracts and understand that risk. But there was just like a lot of like trust issues, right? It was like, is it really there? How much can I rely on it? But as that shift to ChatGPT happened, I mean, that moment, everybody had access to AI. Like, I mean, in the simplest form of typing in, question and being able to see value. And something about that moment just changed everybody's mindset. It's kind of like when Salesforce put Salesforce out on the web for people to be working with that as their sales team. They're like, oh, I don't need to go install software anymore. I just have it available to me on the web and it's always up to date. Same thing happened with us on the AI front with ChatGPT. It really just introduced this sort of tectonic shift in people's mindsets that AI is tangible and we don't need to be scared of it. Even if we are scared of it, we need to go figure it out. And so Document Crunch is really, in a lot of ways, we built a great product. We built something that was valuable, but we're riding a wave where now people come to us, our customers come to us asking us what their AI strategy should be. Not just how they can go and use it for reviewing their contracts, but like, how should we be thinking about this world? How should we be thinking about our data? Is our data being used to train these models? How can we protect our information? Like, how can we take advantage of it? And that's really, I think, when you think about it, like, that's a very interesting moment in time, is that Assemble is really taking advantage of having a great product in the cloud shift, and Document Crunch is really taking advantage of having a great product in the AI shift.
Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of pinpoint that the ChatGPT is the defining line of AI. Do you think that moment took AI from being kind of the maybe overhyped buzzword in the industry to having the practical realities that the light bulb moment went off for people?
I do, because I think it was one of those things you realize you couldn't ignore it. I really think that was it. I mean, one of the common conversations that we have is that what ChatGPT has done is it's created this sort of grassroots adoption of AI. So,
well, it made it easy.
It made it easy, but the dirty secret inside of many organizations is that if you're not allowing people to use it, they're going to use it around you.
Right.
I mean, because they realize it's making them more productive. I mean, I'm sure you've used it. I use it all the time.
Yeah, it's my favorite brainstorming partner.
Huge brainstorming partner, like a great way just to have a great editor of the things that you're writing. As a matter of fact, they're getting good enough to even write in your voice so that you can use them as kind of brainstorming. And then like, hey, give me a draft and I'll take it from here. Like, that's a huge productivity saver. Like, think about the fact in our world is that if I don't have to go write a notice from scratch, I'm more likely to write a notice for the things that I need to do. Like, if we have like ways for us to help like connect writing to the data or reporting to the data in a way that was really challenging before, you had to go to your BI team or you had to know how to code. Like, all those walls have kind of come down now. And I saw someone, I think it was one of the sort of AI thought leaders, Andrew McCarthy, who came up with a lot of the transformer work. He said, like, English is the new programming language. And I was like, that is like a great way to think about it, because I mean, now people can just simply explain what they want to do and they have technology that can go and do it. So it's democratized that for everybody. And it's not just locked up in the IT department or in the folks that know how to code. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What misconceptions do you think are still out there around AI in construction?
That's an interesting question. I'd probably flip the question around. I would say people's interpretation of the challenges with AI are still largely correct. For example, I mean, you hear things about like AI hallucinates. It does. Like, I mean, you have to be cautious when you're using these things. In many cases, I would say one of the big misconceptions, I will say this is a misconception, is that folks are still by default scared that their data is being used to train. And most all of the major like model providers, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, I mean, they're very conscious of the fact that people don't want their data to be used for training. And by default, largely it is not. So that's one misconception, is that for the most part, if you're using a reputable frontier model creator provider, your data is largely protected. But you still need to be cautious. I mean, there's cases where that might not be the case. And like, it's one of the things that we look at ourselves as is we're kind of the trust layer between our companies and how their data is being used or trained. But I would say though that it is very easy to quickly get value from these AI solutions, but you do need to trust but verify that the outcome is indeed what you want. And so I think one of the big challenges right now is you are probably getting really good results from some of these models, but you don't have a good way of interpreting those results. You don't have a good way of understanding like what information was used from your data to provide that outcome. And that's where I think product providers like ourselves and others, that's where we have to actually set the standard is like, you should definitely lean into using these AI technologies, but you should trust and verify that how your information is being used is indeed correct, that you can rely on them. So kind of answered your question, kind of jumped around your question, but those are my perspectives on it.
Yeah, well, let's dig into that a bit. So establishing benchmarks for AI solutions is crucial there. How do you define what quality looks like for AI? Is there kind of a quantifiable metric, or is that more subjective depending on the company and their data strategy?
Yeah, so that is a great question. So there's been a shift with these new generative models, and so probably I can best explain it by looking kind of backwards to what machine learning was before ChatGPT, and then moving it forward. So in the world of AI, in the world that we were living in document crunch before the ChatGPT moment and these generative AI models, we were literally purpose building models for like going and taking in a bunch of different contracts, usually publicly available contracts, or if our customers were willing to share some of those contracts, we would go and train models, like literally to identify key language and for all these different provisions that we were looking for. But we had to have thousands of contracts representing all these different examples. And what we could do during that period of time is we could attest after a period of time of testing what level of accuracy on a given set of data that we were going to be able to provide for identifying, say, provision X, right? We could say, we know that with a 90% accuracy, we are going to find that provision or contract. It's never going to be perfect, but it's going to be like, you can reasonably rely on us to be better than like your experienced attorney at finding that provision and being able to identify it. In the new world of AI and this generative AI, it's almost like the wild, wild west. Like if you're creating a prompt to go find that, I mean, you're relying really on the knowledge that's built into that model, which is completely opaque as to how well you're doing that. And so this industry needs new standards and benchmarks for being able to evaluate these capabilities and these new ways of working with these models. And that's one of the things Document Crunch is actually working on, is that we feel like there has to be an industry standard and benchmark for being able to assess the quality of like what we were able to do before the generative AI models came out, where we were able to say with 90% accuracy, we can identify this provision. But for more complex tasks that can be carried out for in this world of generative AI. So say, for instance, I want to go and create an executive summary of all that occurred on my project in the last week, or I want to go create a notice of a weather event that occurred on the project. How do you know how accurate that is? Because you're bringing in data, you're retrieving information from your specific project knowledge. You're generating a notice that you hope has everything in there, but you need to assure that. We feel like there needs to be benchmarks for doing that. And so one of the things that we're working on, and we'll be talking more about throughout this year, is as a standard by which you can evaluate the tasks that products like ours and others are carrying out to ensure that we can say, 70% accuracy, 80% accuracy, 90% accuracy, we can achieve that task. And what is really interesting and an evolving thing that we have to be able to deal with there is that these models are coming out faster than we can consume them. There's a new GPT model or a new, Gemini model that comes out every 6 weeks, 3 months, whatever the period of time. But the capabilities of those models change. Some of them improve, some of them actually diminish. And we still need to be able to swap out those models and see how they're impacted by the things that we thought that we were doing really well before that could be even better than what we were doing them before, or worse, so that we can go and figure out where to go resolve those problems. And that's a new world that we're operating in. And that's why these benchmarks need to exist. There should be a benchmark that really lays out all the different tasks that one would want to carry out as a project manager or as an estimator. And we should be able to speak to how well we're performing that against the standard status quo, right? If you uploaded your contract into ChatGPT, how well is it doing in identifying these things? We should be able to attest to how well we're doing those things. And so that's how we see the world moving. And you're starting to see this with the existing model providers. They can tell you like how well they're performing on math or science or whatever. And as they improve and evolve the models, we should be able to do the same thing for construction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it gets to the trust but verify, like you were talking about. Are there certain processes and tools that you use to measure the effectiveness and really to be able to, spotlight those times when it hallucinates? Because maybe you don't have firsthand knowledge, so you don't know. You have to just kind of take the data. Are there certain processes or tools there?
So we have a subject matter expert team, actually former attorneys. Some of those have been in-house counsel in the general contracting community. Some of those have been project managers that actually have internal benchmarks that they use to evaluate our product, make sure that for the various tasks that we perform through document crunch, from a contract review to creating a playbook for the project team, that they meet our standards of quality. We have a huge training set and testing set of data that we evaluate our quality from before we ship our product. We also have the ability for customers to provide feedback through our product so that they can help us understand where we might have missed the mark. Yeah, you missed this provision, or hey, the language we're seeing evolve in the industry a bit around, say, material price escalations or whatever that case may be. We have to make sure that we're tuning ourselves to how the industry is evolving. And in addition, we really believe it's important through the product that we identify where we have retrieved that information from their project knowledge to supply that answer. So say, for instance, we were providing a project playbook for a project team and say, hey, we're going to take a contract and we're going to say, these are the key things that you as a project manager need to know to properly administer that contract. We need to show you where we got that information. It's like, that's the trust but verify part. Like you needed to check us, because just like, say, a project admin that you might have given that task, or your risk management team that might have given that task, mistakes can be made. And you need to make sure that you're like actually going in and reviewing things, that you're not just solely relying on us. But in order to do that, we try to make it extremely easy for our customer to be able to jump into their contracts or to their specs and identify where we actually pulled that information to provide that playbook. So it's really multi-factor. Like, it's like subject matter expertise to standards of evaluation, to customer feedback, to allowing the customer to be able to get the tools to trust but verify the information on their own.
Yeah. I think that's a good multi-touch approach there. So Document Crunch really emphasizes the project-centric solution growth. Explain kind of what that means, why it's important.
Yeah, so it was an aha moment for us. When we started Document Crunch, we really were focused on back office legal review teams. As a matter of fact, many of our customers and prospects come to us initially with that use case in mind. They're like, we know Document Crunch reviews contracts, and we want to make sure that we are using something like this as the first review and the last review of our contracts. And honestly, that's enough value. Like, you're getting more than what you pay for coming to Document Crunch, honestly, just for that. But one of the interesting aha moments that we had when we started talking to those back office teams, the legal teams, was that, hey, we need to arm the project teams with this knowledge, because one of the dirty little secrets, and I say this inside of every executive boardroom, so you can in the industry, so this is not going to be something they don't know. The people who most need to read the contracts don't. Like, that need to really go into those contracts and understand how to administer those contracts. They're very busy. It's not that they're not trying to do their job. The key is they're actually trying to do their job, which is to manage the project and to be a superintendent on the project. But ultimately, it's also very important that you understand what you signed up for, and that you're not putting your business at risk by, say, for instance, not sending a notice when you should, within the period of time that you should. And so often that just kind of goes on the by folks, because they aren't thinking about what they signed up for in the contract on a regular basis or on a timely basis. So our aha moment was that we need to arm the project teams. We need to go ahead and not expect them to read the contract fully. We need to arm them with the information from the contract that's important to them for the role that they serve on that project. And so that's where we came up with the concept of project playbooks, which was, how do we take that contract and abstract it down to the information that the team needs to know as a reference material for them to be able to quickly come up to speed and kick off the project on the right foot. And so being involved at that stage is super important. And then secondarily to that, and this is really a big focus of Document Crunch on the go forward, is how can we become almost like smoke detectors on the project so that we can monitor for these compliance events when they occur? We established a partnership with Procore as one of our initial ones. So we're embedding Document Crunch into Procore so that we can kind of be kind of a guide by their side in terms of like understanding, making sure that the contract's staying top of mind, and that we're, bringing things like a notice builder to them through Procore so that they can quickly address those notices. But also we brought in our ability for them to just simply ask questions so they can chat with their contract right through Procore where they might have a question, and we can surface that when they need it. And as we go forward, we'll be automating a lot more of that. So we can say, hey, we noticed in your daily logs that a weather event was mentioned. Did you know you needed to send a notice? Like, by the way, we've already drafted a notice. We have the information. We've already drafted a notice. Review it, make sure the right people are approving it, and move forward. So that idea of contract compliance automation is an area where you're going to see Document Crunch really push into in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love that. What advice would you give to companies that are looking to integrate AI into their workflows, but maybe they're feeling overwhelmed with all the stuff and the task and the job that they already have? Where's the low-hanging fruit for them to start with AI?
I think there are vendors like us that are out there solving for specific use cases that are valuable. I mean, what you need to do is you need to be able to get some quick wins, right? I mean, so, you have to assume that your team is probably out there testing out some of these technologies personally or even on their own. And so you want to work with, I think, trusted vendors that you can make sure that the information data security of your company's information is staying behind lock and key the way that you want it, so that you can trust the people that can go and press on these. But find the use case. I mean, as a matter of fact, I was sitting in an AI and machine learning forum with a bunch of general contractors yesterday, and there was the company Comfort Systems that actually run a survey across all their business units internally about what are the ways you want to take advantage of AI. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear what these guys have to say. And their top three were contract review, generative design, and conversations with my data. And I thought that was super interesting because we obviously didn't know where that we would be kind of keying on a particular area. But I mean, reviewing your contracts, kind of the thin edge of the wedge into AI, right? If you think about it, it's just like, this is an unstructured piece of information that I want to understand where I need to go look to make sure that we are not signing up for something we shouldn't sign up for. So it's kind of an obvious use case, and it's definitely a great use case of AI to start with. Generative design is not something that we're like in our hemisphere. That's like an Autodesk problem. Like if you want to go and you want to think about like, hey, go take my 3D model and come up with like 7 different, design options for this, like that's definitely going to be in their wheelhouse. And there's other vendors, I'm sure, that are attacking that problem. But another area that we really feel is important and definitely within the wheelhouse of the Document Crunch, and honestly, a very important use case for any company to think about is, how do I have conversations with my data, right? It's very similar to the ChatGPT aha moment, right? Like I can come in and I can ask a question of this world knowledge, but what if your project information was at your fingertips and you could take advantage of it to summarize, analyze, ask a question, write a report, like all that stuff is now available to us. And what we see ourselves is like, we call ourselves Document Crunch for a reason. Like we just want to be able to crunch this information and make it easily accessible so that people can take advantage of it for a variety of use cases that we may not have even thought about before. And we see that all the time. So I would say, find your sort of thin edge to kind of get in. Like if it's contract review that is like what is most tangible to your company, start there. If it is like connecting information in that you have, like your accounting information or your specification information, like start there so that your team can get familiar with like, oh, I can ask these questions, or I can do, I can perform these actions. Like those are the things that are going to demonstrate to people that there's value here. And then that gets people thinking about it. Just like you said at the very beginning, you use ChatGPT as like a brainstorming partner. Like imagine if you could brainstorm like scenarios, scheduling scenarios on your project, or you're running into an issue like where it's challenging to find the information that you need. Use it for that, and find vendors that you can trust and you can rely that make sure that your data is staying secure so that you don't have the fear of your data being trained on some of these models.
Yeah, love that. I love the concept of finding your thin edge too. I'm gonna use that phrase. That's a great one. So as we start to land the plane here, a couple kind of rapid fire questions for you. What is the phrase modeling the future? What does that kind of mean and look like to you?
So I think modeling the future to me, I would say for any company in our space is to look out 2, 3, 10 years and think about, like, assume that AI is going to be successful. Assume that your data is going to be in the form of a knowledge base that is more accessible and easy to use. What does your business look like when that type of information is there? Can you take lessons learned from prior projects more easily into the future? Can you be more predictive on a given project about what's possibly going to occur? And so when I think about where the industry is going and modeling that future, is that put yourself in the future and then work your way backwards to like some of those use cases that are going to be most valuable to your company. I think what Comfort Systems did, for example, is a great way to think about it. Like, you can't possibly know all the different ways people are thinking about leveraging AI or different solutions they want to go create. So ask them what they're doing, and then start figuring out, like, are there solutions out there that I can take off the shelf and do this stuff with? Are there experiments that we need to run internally to see how we're going to go about doing this? But assume that these technologies are going to be successful and figure out how to play them to your strengths and weaknesses. That is how I think about that statement. Yeah.
Awesome. What does innovation mean to you?
Innovation means to me is don't sit in the now. Like it's easy to get caught in your day to day. I mean, hell, it's easy for me to get caught up in my day to day of doing my job. But like, figure out how you can introduce ways for your team to be innovation partners and not just for individuals to be the innovation leaders. And what I mean by that is that, I mean, at Document Crunch, me and maybe a couple other folks are the resident AI nerds, right? So, I mean, like, we're looking at this stuff all the time and we're thinking about how to apply it to our product or just apply it to our day-to-day work. But one of the things I did, I recently hired a new director of customer success who came out of the Procore world and knows the construction space very well. If he's interested in AI, I was like, look, I want you to create a AI forum where everybody in our company is invited optionally. That we do every 2 weeks. And I want to just hear, and I want people to be able to come and tell us how they're using AI to accelerate our business, to become more productive. To me, that's like establishing things like that allow you to democratize innovation, right? So it's like, because there's a lot of people out there trying and pushing on these things and want to push on these things, or maybe haven't really opened their mind to how they could be innovating. But if they see it, like, it's like these aha moments. Like I can't tell you how many times where I've had like our customer success team going, hey, I'm using AI to understand like this transcript from a customer and what are the action items I need to go take. And then all of a sudden the business development team was like, oh, man, I could go do that. And in this different way, right? It's just kind of like looking through the prism and kind of your own angle. Mm-hmm. And that's innovation to me, right? Innovation doesn't have to be in an ivory tower. And mm-hmm. I think sometimes in construction, it can wind up being that way because everybody's busy, and you wind up with these, as the organization grows, you like almost have like a department that's dedicated to innovation. But the truth of it is like with all this democratization of AI and other things, really everybody's an innovator. Everybody should be innovating. And you need to figure out ways for your company to come together, similar to like what Comfort Systems does, is say, we're looking across the organization, how are people wanting to take advantage of these technologies, and are we enabling them to do so? Mm-hmm. If we don't enable them to do so, innovation won't happen and you will be left behind. But like, you're going to also either be left behind because of competition emerging that's going to be taking advantage of these technologies better than you, or you're going to be left behind to the point where it's just too tough to catch up. And I think that's the reason that like you've got to make innovation a team sport and not just an ivory tower.
Yeah. More than agree. It has to be part of the culture, and really taking the improv comedy approach of the yes and. Have you ever seen
The only,
that exercise
yeah,
where like you never say no to anything, you just keep on. Somebody says an idea and you go yes and then you add on to it and you can kind of put your own spin to it. I think when innovation is part of the culture of a company, that's when you can kind of unleash the power of that for sure.
yeah. And I'm very, one of the things I think about a lot is this isn't like, we talk about this in relationship to construction, but we're a product company. It's hard for us to keep up. Like I just said, I mean, it was hard for us. I kind of have a mandate out there. Like everybody here in this company should be taking advantage of AI, but it's hard to do that when you've got, day-to-day stuff that you're doing and you're kind of ignoring it. So you got to kind of create the space for people to be able to dream a little bit. And I mean, innovation really is just dreaming. Like, it's like, what could we possibly do? And I think when you open that up a bit, it brings it sheds a different light. And it also makes people collaborate on things. Somebody might be a little bit more advanced at using these solutions to do something than somebody else, but we can accelerate each other if we're all talking and we're thinking about these things.
Absolutely. Well, how do people find out more information on Document Crunch and connect with you?
Documentcrunch.com, but LinkedIn, I think we have a high bar on our LinkedIn game. So we're always putting out new content and engaging our community as well. And we'd love to talk to you. So definitely documentcrunch.com or LinkedIn. You'll find us all over the place.
Awesome. Well, final question for you. If I could give you all construction power, you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing in the industry, what would you pick to innovate?
Oh boy, this is a long range question, but I think where we're going to see AI evolve, I think the reality of robotics is going to be a big deal. I mean, I think that's a 10-year out problem, but we're not going to solve it in 10 years. We're going to solve it starting, in the next few years as we evolve and understand it. But like, I'm bullish on like how robotics is going to impact construction and bring more productivity and safety to job sites. Like if I was looking at what I do beyond Document Crunch, that's probably an area where I would go and spend more time. Like, how do we apply the evolution of AI to robotics?
Interesting. Well, Trent, thanks so much for taking the time and joining the show today. This was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.